Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of Fan Art Friday. In this video I'm working on a drawing of Ryuko Matoi from Kill La Kill. This was suggested in the comments quite a few times recently, especially for me to check out the show. I finally did, and I thought it was awesome. Ryuko's character especially. She's a very powerful character, and she's very moody, so I wanted to try and catch that in this drawing. I started off the outlines with a sepia coloured Copic Markers pen that's 0.05mm. This is extremely fine, but it gives you the kind of control to be able to spend extra time on the outlines and making sure they're as perfect as possible. I really, in my recent drawings, I've been trying to spend more time on the outlining and trying to see the kind of effect it gives in the final product, and I feel like spending a bit more time on the outlining can really help when you're working on a drawing like this, especially with anime. I tried to keep thicker lines around the eye and underneath the face and underneath some parts of the hair to add that dynamic thickness to the hair, and kind of change the volume of the lines, having the finer lines towards the top of the head. And I left some thicker lines around some of the clothing as well, just to keep some bold outlines around some of that and to help with the direction of the shading. Once the outlines were completed, it was time to move on to the colouring, and for the colouring I used Copic Markers. To start off with the skin tones, I used a pinkish white marker. I tried to keep it as one layer, and I didn't change the pen strokes at all, trying to keep it in one direction and as smooth as possible. And then over the top of this, to add some shading, I used the blush Copic marker to add some nice warm shading to underneath the hair and underneath her chin, and to her bottom lip. For the colouring of Ryuko's eye, for the darker tones I used Prussian blue, and then for the lighter tones towards the bottom of the iris I used sky, and kind of blended between them to kind of smooth the gradient. And then for the darkness of Ryuko's pupil I used the Prussian blue again, but then I blended a bit of sky blue towards the centre to add a nice kind of highlighted patch towards the middle of the eye. And then for the shading towards the corners, to both corners of the eye, I used the cool grey markers, cool grey number 3 and 1. And then over the top of all this I wanted to add some highlights, so I used a Uni-ball highlighter pen, and I added a highlight to the top and the bottom of the eye, and also along the very bottom edge of the eye. With Ryuko's face completely coloured, it was time to move on to colouring her hair, and for this, for the main colour of her hair, I used a smoky blue marker. I left an area towards the left side of the head blank and uncoloured, ready for adding highlights, and then I filled them in with an ice blue marker, and then around those sections I used the highlighter pen to add a nice bright anime style highlight. And then to add some darker outlining around all of the sections of hair, I used the Prussian blue, just using it around the outlines of her hair, and then using it to add some darker shading around the underneath of her hair that you can see around Ryuko's neckline. Once all of that colouring was completed, I then used the highlighter pen to add some extra highlights around the hair, and then I picked up the strong red marker to use in that red streak that you see on Ryuko. It's a very distinctive feature, and I wanted to make it as prominent and as bright as possible. I think the brightness of this red really contrasted well with the lightness of the hair. I could have chosen to make Ryuko's hair darker in this drawing, and some examples of her hair is much darker on some of the references I saw, but I chose to make her hair lighter in this drawing to really show up the effects of having the dark outlines and then the brightness of that streak in her hair. Moving on to the colouring of her clothing, I used a deep reddish blue for the colouring of her top, senkets, and then I used a strong red for the streaks of colour going along the collar. I also used that for the red colouring on Senket's eye, and then I used the acid yellow and an orange marker. To add some shading towards the left side of the clothing, I used a warm grey, I think it's a warm grey 3, just to add a little bit of shading towards the left side, and then that was the colouring of the top completed. And then from then it was time to focus on the outlines again, and for that I used a Copic Multiliner black pen. I used this to add a dark outline around some of the prominent features of this drawing, so I used it along the bottom edge of the red streak of hair. I used it on the eye and the eyebrow and underneath her face, and along her neck. I also used it on some parts of Senket's to help make that feature stand out as well. And then finally, to help make Ryuko stand out from the page, I added a comic panel kind of layout. So I used the multi-liner pen to add a boxed panel around the background of this drawing. And once that was done, the drawing was completed. Please let me know what you think of this drawing in the comments below, and also let me know if you have any drawing suggestions for future videos. And if you enjoy videos like this, then make sure you're subscribed, and any likes or shares on this video are hugely appreciated and it really means a lot to me. If you want to follow me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and follow along with the progress photos throughout the week, then be sure to check out the links in the description box below. And once again, thank you so much for the support on this channel. It really means a lot to me and I have so much fun working on these drawings and videos. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you all soon.